what do communication and preparing for parenthood have to do with each other? Stick around. We are going to talk to Chanie Twersky and get all of her good, important information on this. So, Honey, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you. And thank you for having me. It's an honor. I'm so excited to see what will unfold here together.
Yeah, a lot of times I just kind of go with the conversation and I have my certain things I want to hit on, but I really like just the back and forth. So I'm very curious
Mm.
and anxious as to what's going to unfold as well. Before we get to your tips and your story, this is the Communicate Great podcast and welcome. I am your host, Traci Poe, and the founder of Communicate Great. And if you have not hit subscribe, like, notifications, all of the things, go ahead and do that now. And we welcome you into the Communicate Great podcast family. Okay, so let's get going. First, Connie, I want to talk about who you are and what you do. So let our audience know all of those important things, and then we'll get into your tips in a minute. So go ahead and introduce yourself and let us know.
Awesome. My name is Chanie Twersky, and I am first and foremost a mother. I was blessed to have 8 children who taught me about parenthood a lot. And I then started to do parenting coaching for the last 15 years. And most recently, I've become aware of how important parenting becomes to do before you actually conceive your child. Because I believe that parenting is not something you do, it's something you are. And
Mm.
there is no performance when it comes to parenting. We don't sit at home and try and think, how am I going to perform with my child? Therefore, we need to prepare ourselves in a way where it's not only education, but there's transformation.
Mm.
Who you are right now and who you want to be as a parent, I believe there needs to be a period of transforming into who you want to be as a parent and then have your child. So that's where I come in and I support singles or newlyweds or couples or even late parents to go through that transformation. And that transformation gives them so much confidence that they can be the kind of parents that they seek to be. So thank you.
Okay.
Yeah.
I love this for so many different reasons. And we were talking just briefly before I hit record. But, when you are going to get married, often you go do premarital counseling or coaching, or you take tests and see how you mesh. And part of that is a conversation about parenting. But that's pretty much just it. It doesn't go super deep. And now let's focus on this. So I really like that you do this type of help with people. Not a lot of people do this. Actually, I can honestly say you're the only person that I know who focuses on parenting before the child is ever conceived, and or I'm sure you would agree, adopted,
Mhm.
whatever that looks like.
Yeah.
And so, because I love communication so much, and I know the depth with which communication and how effective you are can either provide a healthy relationship or an unhealthy relationship. I love that this is what you bring into the conversations, the analysis. Let's check it out. Let's learn. Let's grow before you're ever holding your baby in your arms. And, I know that there are times I have a friend who has a story where literally ended up with a baby that she was not expecting overnight.
Mm,
And so, but I think that's a rare instance. Usually you have a little more time to prepare.
mhm.
So, can you just tell us? I know you said 8 kids, and wow, that is fabulous. That is amazing. And so, we'll talk about kind of that woven, maybe like how did this play out in your life? I know how things play out in a whole lot of people's lives if you don't really think about it and prepare. So let's get into, unless you have anything else to share, let's get into your first tip.
Absolutely. So I believe that communication starts within. And the process that I would take you through if you were in that phase of, you want to have a child. And I know many people have that knowing sometimes from early on in their life, sometimes
Mm.
when they're teens still, or even children. But of course, when you come to that adult time in your life where you're clear that this still is your path, what I love to help you, if you're in that, or I recommend for you to do, is have that period where you communicate within, meaning take time to ask yourself questions. Take time to ask yourself courageous questions, which
Mm,
sometimes we try to not look the tiger in the face, so to speak. And I know some questions can be like, how can I not repeat the same patterns that I grew up with? And how can I not bring in the kind of behaviors that I don't like in myself right now? And
mm,
not do that with my child. So these are important questions that I think is important to have with yourself first before you bring anything into the relationship, with whom in parenthood there's always a partner. In a
right.
business, you can be a solopreneur, but you're going to have team members, but you can still make decisions on your own. But in a parenthood situation, how how we're created divinely, how God created us, if you believe in a God, I do, um, is brilliantly. So we're not carrying this load alone.
Mm,
So before you bring that to your partner, I recommend being super clear. Even like simple questions, ask yourself, how many children do I want to have? So this is something that is the first thing that I would recommend to do. Yeah.
okay, I like that. One of the things that I tell people is there is no self-growth until you analyze yourself. And what your tip is for communicating, it falls right in line with that belief of mine. You've got to sit down and really ask yourself the easy and the hard, as you said, the courageous questions to settle on some stuff. And it's possible to maybe spend some time healing from some things, from some past traumas, some betrayals, whatever that looks like. Spend some time getting yourself in a healthy state, is what I'm hearing you say. Really thinking through. Do you ever recommend that people journal during this process?
I absolutely recommend
Okay.
people journal. I took a lot of time to actually create prompts for people in this stage to help them journal. Sometimes people don't have that easily,
Mm,
but definitely make it your own. Come up with questions that are actually ruminating in your own mind, and allow yourself to take time to answer those, because it's very hard to communicate with somebody else before you even know what those things mean to you.
right.
So, I mean, there's one aspect that I want to add to what you said about the healing.
Okay.
Um, the primary approach to healing, believe it or not, I found to be is your relationship with your past self, or
Mm,
mm, uh plural, because we have every moment in our life is still alive in us. So when you build a relationship with your inner family, I believe that to be a prerequisite.
wow.
So yeah, I'll add that one as communicating with yourself first. So these are the two. One is more intellectual and one is more spiritual. emotional and relational with your inner
Mm.
family. When there's inner harmony, you can bring that harmony to your partner and to your child eventually.
Wow. Yeah, that's huge. I like that. Wow. Okay. All right. So, anything else on tip number 1, which is spend some time talking to yourself? Anything on that before we move to tip number 2?
Um, don't be afraid to be silly. I'm just kidding, talking to yourself. Um,
And why not have fun? Because I think laughter is a huge gift for us.
yes. Yeah, I think we need to bring some lightness. I know people are resistant to going to the dark places of your inner child or children experiences, especially if you had delicate, painful, or even traumatic experiences. It's not your fault.
Right.
And this isn't either about blaming anyone in your life. This is about understanding how it felt for you in the time and becoming the caretaker or more evolved parent figure to give that past self a new experience. So if your inner child or children were abandoned, if you continue to abandon them, you are perpetuating that.
Wow.
If you begin to nurture them, you are healing your inner
Mm,
ones.
wow. Wow. So, is this part of the work that you do with couples to help them get ready? You spend some time helping them really analyze themselves and healing and talking to, as you're saying, your inner family. Is that part of what you do?
Yeah, absolutely. It's actually two separate parts. Like the first part is more like um logical, intellectual, analytic. Like
Okay.
what's your dream? Like I help them create like I call it a family dream catcher. Like what's your unique dream? And the
Mm,
second part, which is I like to see it as the meat of what I offer to my clients is a skill set.
mm,
Because I believe it's a skill to know how to relate to your inner children. And I needed to go through my own healing journey, as many of us do. And I feel I was fortunate,
mm,
very fortunate to be able to be guided to mentors and experts and leading edge trauma experts. And I was able to
mm.
train with them in the last 10 years.
Wow.
So, yeah, so I was like the apprentice or mentee of very advanced skills. And I believe this should be in the hands of every parent.
Mm.
So,
Yeah.
parents don't need to be dependent on psychologists who go to school for many years to learn about psychology. Every parent needs to understand what emotions mean. And
Mm,
I didn't understand my emotions 20 years ago. And I needed to go through the whole path to develop my emotional intelligence so that I can be integrated. And I remember my first therapist told me, I think your biggest problem is that you're too smart. Your intellect is way out of balance with your emotional intelligence. And it hurt me, at that point in time, but I also took it upon myself to bring my emotional intelligence to match my intellectual intelligence, which was more natural and easier for me. And it was my go to place.
mm.
And I
Wow.
want to gift that now to every person who's open to um, learning that. It's like
Mm,
learning piano. It's like any other skill. It's something that every person can learn and with practice can become emotionally very intelligent. And that's what your child needs when you
mhm.
have a child.
Right, right. And that out of that, health, out of that growth, does stimulate better communication for sure. So, okay, what is tip number 2 for us?
So the second tip is that communication is a two-way street.
Yeah.
It's not a one-way street. So it's giving and receiving in the
Mhm.
same time. And one of the things that I trained in is called Imago by Harville Hendrix. I don't know if you heard of
Mm-mm.
him, but this is like many years ago. This was very popular. And he has taught how couples should communicate by giving it time when you're the giver to pay attention on how you give, and when you're the receiver to pay attention on how you receive. And he called the process mirroring. So he provided a simple suggestion as a beginning. When you're advanced on an emotional level, like you just mentioned uh, a minute ago, communication becomes a little bit less, a little bit more natural.
Mm.
So, um, if you're not that developed, you still can use a skill like mirroring, which means you are conscious about what you share. Because sometimes when we're very emotional, we can just spill all that emotion on the other person, and that does not feel nice. And but if we sit down and we say, okay, let's communicate about this topic, I can pause and think, how can I say it in a way where I don't spill my emotions on that person, but I only express what's present for me? And then the receiver in this practice simply mirrors back the words, and it can be the exact words, or if you're a little bit more advanced, like what you're hearing beyond the words.
Mm.
So that's kind of something that's a tip that I would recommend, to be conscious of the giving and the receiving. Because sometimes people can think they're communicating and they're not really. Like if I'm angry and I just burst out, that person is going to run away, even if they're not running away physically.
Right.
So,
Absolutely. Yes. So I you're using the term mirroring. I use the term mirroring differently within the communication world, but what you're talking about is something that it is a tool that I share with people when I'm working with them, but I call it paraphrasing. I think what you're talking
okay.
about is kind of defining paraphrasing,
Yeah.
where you say back, "What I hear you saying is" something like that, and
Yes.
what's interesting is when you do that, when you say, "What I'm hearing you say is blah, blah, blah," that gives the original sender, the giver, you're using the term giver, the opportunity to say, "Yeah, that's it," or, "Well, no, what I meant was," and then you can go back and forth to make sure that there is a mutual understanding of what that message was. So, yes, I like what you're calling mirroring is definitely a technique that people need to use, especially if they get off with somebody. Like, let's say there's somebody in your life, boss, spouse, child, whatever, and a lot of the times you're talking and you're getting off, it's especially important to use, again, what you're saying, mirroring that type of technique just so that you can be on the same page.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I like that tip.
And when you say mirroring in
Mhm.
communication, I'm curious how you interpret that.
So that's more of nonverbal type thing. So have you ever seen somebody cross their arms and then pretty soon other people around them are crossing their arms, or cross the legs and pretty soon other people around them are
Yeah.
crossing the legs? That's mirroring, but in a nonverbal sense. But then you can also take it even beyond that. So if I'm raising my voice at you and if I'm getting emphatic, right? Typically, you will kind of rise to meet that,
Mhm.
and so you're mirroring a lot of those nonverbal
Mhm.
cues. That's how I use that term.
I actually love that. That's very insightful. Even though it's probably something I'm aware, but I have never heard it be explained in that way. And it just brings that more to the forefront to realize and to recognize that. Yeah.
Oh,
And
good.
and I guess that can bring me to another tip,
Okay,
if you want to go there.
let's do it.
Yeah. So, because um it reminds me of something that I have watched, and I'll share with you in a minute what. But the tip is to understand that listening is not only with the ears. And I love how you describe this mirroring. And what I want to recommend as a tip is how can we use that with intention to listen?
Yes.
And the story that I mentioned is, I think, 30 years ago when I was a young, really young woman before I had children myself. And I was out of town. I was visiting family, and we all watched a film together. And the film was a story of an autistic child.
Okay.
And none of the professionals were able to tame this child. And then there was this high school volunteer who came to this child, and the mother was happy every moment that she didn't need to deal because the child was really difficult to handle. And she came and she took the child into a room, and she mirrored, like exactly intentionally mirrored what the child did. So if the child put her hand on the wall, she put the hand on the wall as well. If the child was crawling, she started to crawl. And everything the child did, she mirrored. And the end of the film is that the child said, I am, I don't remember the names, but I'm just going to make up a name. I am Amy. You are Joy. So it was the first time that the child realized she came out of her world, and she was able to realize who she is and who she is just
Wow.
from her entering her world. And this
Mm.
is something I when I started teaching parenting courses, this goes back to, 2011 and beyond. This was a strong point that I brought in my lessons, which is people call it empathy. And people don't necessarily know what empathy means. And from that story and from learning psychology and being myself intuitive and empathic, I interpret it. I interpret it as, this is what I say, listening is not only with your ears. How much can you remove yourself from the equation and enter the other person's world?
Mm.
And that I call making room for that.
Mm.
And this is sometimes hard for people to do because if we're protective of our own self, there's not always room for the other. And you
Mm.
want to listen to them, but I can't listen to them because I can't. I'm full of my own emotions and my own thoughts about this and my beliefs. I don't have room to hear what you believe or what you feel. And
Mm,
this is no judgment on anyone who feels like that. That person needs healing first.
mhm.
However, as a parent or as a partner preparing for parenthood, this is a skill that I would recommend to work on and to know how to comfort yourself and tell yourself, I will have all of me back in a couple of minutes. Just for this temporary moment, can I put me aside? And can I put my listening heart and soul and ears and sit right next to this person and really listen?
Mm,
So I don't know if that's clear, but that's definitely a skill that I would recommend
yeah.
exploring.
And that is a hard skill because what do we typically do when we are the listener, when we are receiving that message? What do we typically do? We are so in our heads about how we're going to respond, how we're going to rebut that comment,
Yeah.
that you are not actively engaging in truly a give and take of a conversation because you are dead on when you say we are so much about me, right? Me. And so it is a skill that is necessary and difficult until you really sit with it for a while and work on that. So I like that you brought that up because it is necessary to be able to truly have that give and take of a conversation, to be able to understand, to truly hear what the other person is saying and
Yeah,
not listen to them.
absolutely. I think that it's a little bit counterintuitive to how we tend to communicate. It's like when information comes in, I hear you, I already have my own information to give you right back.
Yeah.
And how many people, and even myself included, I like want to jump in the middle of you're still saying that sentence, but I am already interrupting because I have something to add. Yeah. It's so hard to just like, let me give that person the honor
Right.
of just sharing themselves. I think there
Oh,
is no greater love that we can give to another. And maybe that's the shift that we can together make happen in the world to gift other people with, let me hear you.
mm, right. I also think there are a lot of people who think if I sit and listen, it's agreement with their opinion. And that is not so. It is you listening and hearing their opinion, their thoughts, their heart, their desires, their goals, their whatever they're talking about. Oh, well, if I sit and I listen and I go, uh-huh, uh-huh, they're going to think I agree with them when really I'm just trying to say, oh, I hear you. And so I think that also is a time when people may kind of push back on this type of true, authentic listening.
Yeah. I mean, your topic, communication, is such a core piece of personal growth
It is.
because it's not the words necessarily that come out. Even what we're creating now and talking about now and inviting the listener to think about this, the one, who's listening to this, um, I think there is so much sense of self that we need to develop to not be afraid that we're going to lose who we are
Right.
by listening to another person
Right.
and to build that trust in your own beliefs, to build that trust in your own ability to care for your emotions, to not feel threatened by listening to something that maybe might just um maybe not discount but question your belief.
Right. Right. Right.
And how much do we have in ourselves to be okay with our beliefs being questioned?
Mm,
You are
right.
not your beliefs. If you identify something that evolves what you believe now, do you want to go there? Or do you want to stay where are right now? So the sense of self needs to be beyond what we believe. It needs to be one that is connected, I believe, in spirituality, because your soul is immeasurable
Mm,
and your value is also invaluable. And
right.
when you are in touch with that self that is immeasurable and uniquely invaluable as a divine being embodied in who you are as a unique manifestation of the divine that never existed before, never will exist after, then you're okay to float with what you believe and to know that you're always evolving as a divine being.
I like what you said when you said gift a few minutes ago, that we're gifting this process to someone by listening to them. And so, just as you were kind of elaborating on that more and more, it does recall to me a thought of, if we don't if someone is not giving us room, holding space for us, allowing us to give our deepest heart, our thoughts, our dreams, our whatever the topic is, if we don't feel heard, how does that feel?
Mm,
Right? Like
yeah,
that cuts in a deep, deep way, to feel like somebody that you're doing life with, again, spouse,
yeah,
coworker, best friend, sister, mom, whoever, child, it doesn't matter.
yeah,
If time after time you're sitting down with that person and you walk away from that conversation, and I use that term loosely, and you don't feel that you were truly seen or understood or heard by that person, whoo, what does that do to that relationship? So,
yeah,
in the same token, we want to do that for the people that we love, the people that we care about. And so I really like that you use the term gift multiple times, because it is a gift to allow that person to know that we see them, we hear them. We may not agree, but we at least hear and recognize their point of view, their thoughts. We value them enough that we give that to them. So I really like that term.
yeah. I think it cannot be emphasized enough, and it also brings me to think that when we listen to somebody, the more we listen, the more fully we'll listen, the more we let our own, people call it ego, but
Yeah,
whatever it is, we don't need to give it a word. Our own beliefs, our own
right.
feelings, just be comfortable in your heart. Know that it's safe and protected. You are safe and protected to make room for you who's speaking right now. The more fully I do that, my message to you is you are important.
Mhm.
And what you're saying is the flip of that. When I, whether with words or with my action, dismiss
Mhm.
or invalidate in any shape and form what you're right now willing to communicate, that cuts deep, because what I am saying in essence is you don't matter.
Mhm.
What you have to say does not matter to me, and that
Exactly.
hurts deeply.
exactly. Damages the relationship,
Yeah.
and I would say if that is a dynamic, that relationship is probably only gonna get worse and worse until the
Yeah.
person that is not seeing validating until maybe they figure it out, and if they never do, I would say, because one of the things I talk about is how you communicate. The health with which you communicate is the health of the relationship. If you've got somebody who is not really truly seeing you and hearing your heart, that is not gonna be a healthy relationship, and I would question when will that end, right? When will that relationship sever? So,
Yeah.
alright, go ahead.
And what I would add to that is just in the context of a couple who's preparing for potentially bringing a child into the world together, this is a shaky foundation.
Mm,
And I think there has to be a formal agreement to really create communication as the glue, both ways, how we speak and how we listen,
yeah,
as a commitment. I think there needs to be an agreement to commit to continuously deepen and enhance and master the skill of communication as a
yes.
foundation for a family.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Right, right. And then you're gonna turn around and model that healthy communication for your kids when you have the kids.
100%. 1000%. I love that. Yeah.
Okay, what is your next tip? Do you have another one? I'm
Let's
just
see.
asking you for more, but I don't even know.
Um, well, I can talk about a couple of things. So I feel like a little bit related to it, but now in the role of when we are the one who want to communicate to the other and we want to be heard, to make sure that the other party is able to receive what you want to communicate. Firstly, you want it to be effective, like just in a practical sense. And if you can allow yourself to become an effective communicator. So, we spoke about being an effective listener, but you also want to develop the skill of being an effective communicator. And that, in and of itself, is a whole other skill.
Right.
And um, this just comes to my mind. I listen a lot to uh, a pretty well-known business influencer. His name is Alex Hermosi. I think you know Alex, right? So he says, "Speak the truth, state the facts." He
Mm,
says that very often, and I like that as a start for communication. When people don't know what should I communicate, especially if you're very emotionally entangled with whatever you want to communicate. So start with speaking the truth and stating the facts, including maybe, um, I don't know how to communicate about this because I feel like my emotions will spill on you and I don't want to hurt you.
mm. Yeah, yeah. That is a great place to start right there.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So, yeah. And I think there are so many. I'm just gonna grab a tissue. Sorry. um, I think there are so many things that are related to being in the role of the communicator. It's also finding the right time, creating creating a container. This is the subject I want to talk about. Either you can ask, are you ready now to have that communication? Are you ready at all? Maybe that
Mm,
person doesn't want to talk about it. Or when would be best? So creating a container, asking permission. So there are a couple of things that you want to be a little bit more conscious. Allow yourself to become a more conscious human being. And in communicating, you can develop that.
Mhm.
And it's just like we spoke about respect when listening, respect when speaking. How can I say what I want to say? What words can I bring it out that will honor the person who I'm speaking to?
Mhm.
Am I paying attention to who they are in response to the subject I want to share about? And then if we're in a conversation, how can I speak in a way that responds to what they said? How can I speak in a way that responds to their body language, to their facial expression? So there is so much nuance in communication where one end of the communication can be really bad. The other end of the communication can be ecstatic and really bring, in this instance, a couple or potential co-parents, a partner, if you're dating somebody who might be somebody you'll start a family with, that can good communication will make your intimate and pleasure life completely different based on how much you develop that.
Right. Right. I think one of the things that I like about this whole idea of having conversations before the child is ever in the picture, I like it because a lot of the work that you're having your clients do is good work for good communication. And I'll give an example. I worked with a team for a while and went and did some workshops with them on interpersonal communication skills. And I asked the man who hired me to come in, do you want the focus to be more on personal life or on the professional life? And he said, no, I want you to go for the personal life because whatever you teach them in terms of communication for the personal life, they're going to be able to use in their business life.
Mm.
So if you take that concept that you are working with couples and helping them develop good, healthy communication habits to talk about having children before the child is even there, it is the same concept. They are going to be able to take these healthy communication skills and habits and use them, as you talked about, in an intimate relationship, in a closeness. So, what you're providing for people goes far beyond having conversations before we have kids. It goes far beyond that. So I love that this is work that you're doing. Okay,
Thank
that's
you.
my little commercial for you. I love what you're doing because it transcends just this one situation.
Yeah, I appreciate that feedback and perspective and understanding how many positive res- how many positive results can come out of it
Right?
and transform. Yeah. And also carry it into how both of these parents listen and communicate with their child from the
Mhm.
moment they're born when their child can't even talk yet, but you can that really goes to the next generation. So,
Mhm.
yeah,
Mhm.
thank you. I appreciate that.
Thank you for what you do.
You're welcome.
We need more people like you in the world.
I appreciate it. And this is such I feel so honored to be on here. Tracy, I think what you're doing is so important. It's like, please, whoever's listening, like the world needs to allow yourself to give yourself the honor of working on communication skills.
Mhm. Mhm. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. All right, do you have any more nuggets for us before we close out?
Any more nuggets? Well, I'll just loop back with my first recommendation. Take time, committed time to listen to your inner ones
Mm,
because in the background, they're always communicating. And it might play out or seem like emotionality. Emotionality is not some kind of external um balloon or object that just happened to have landed in your being or body and you
mm,
don't know what to do with this thing. If you're feeling emotional, some people call it triggered
mm,
or uncomfortable, there is a child who is living inside you who needs you,
mm.
needs your time, needs your attention, needs your love, and needs something. And I cannot stress that enough
Wow.
how important it is for yourself to feel more harmonious inside, for your relationship that you're building and want to start a family with, and then for your parenting so you don't pass those wounds that those little inner ones are still
Right,
carrying
right,
into the next generation.
mm, right. Wow, I love it. I am so glad that you came on. I'm glad we connected and had that first conversation and that you agreed to come on to the Communicate Great podcast. And can you tell our audience how they can get in touch with you? And we will include that in the show notes. But just how can they find you if they want to find you?
Good. So I would say on a personal level, they can find me on my Instagram and DM me.
Okay.
On uh and I want to invite you to my I have a community, a free community. So if you want to have a family, whether if you're single, you're newlywed, you're a late parent and you still want to have a family, I have a free community for future parents called the Future Parents Collective.
Okay.
And well, yeah, if you're not in school, reach out to me on Instagram, but I am inviting you to join School with a K. I have a community there, and you can DM me in school as well, of course. So, yeah,
Yes, yeah. And again, I will put that I'm gonna make that note so I can make sure that we put that in there. So I will get your Instagram information from you and the school community information, and we'll drop that down. So,
you.
all right, everybody, thank you
Yeah.
so much for your time. And honey, thank you for your time and your beautiful heart and your beautiful words.
Mm,
I am
I
so
appreciate
glad that
you.
you were one of
Thank
our
you.
guests on the podcast. I know. All right, everybody, we'll see you next time. Bye.